guys, what is up? Today we are talking about added sugars and how to reduce those in our diet in a really realistic way without completely cutting them out and still having a normal life. In the previous video that I recorded and posted, it was all about how a cookie can be healthier than an apple, and there's a lot of context that goes within that statement. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and watch that after this video. But really, with the idea of that, I never said in the video that a cookie was going to be nutritionally equivalent to an apple or nutritionally superior either. And so we do want to overall be mindful of the amount of added sugars that we consume. It's okay to still have some. You don't have to completely cut them out in order to have a healthy lifestyle, to have a healthy body, to feel great and energized. But it is helpful to be mindful and to know where some of those added sugars can come into your nutrition, into your body, into your diet. So while I am in full support of sometimes going ahead and enjoying that cookie or that donut or whatever, we want to be mindful of what we're overall eating so that we can just feel good, so that we can have the energy to do what we need to do outside of nutrition, right? So you don't want to spend your whole focus, your whole mental energy thinking about what you need to put on your plate and how much of it and how much of that and all of those things. It shouldn't take up that much space in your brain. It shouldn't take up that much space of your time. It shouldn't take up that much time overall. So my whole goal is to help people feel empowered around their food choices, to take people from confusion and fear to a place where they feel confident and empowered about having food, making food work for them and their body and their lifestyle, rather than having food control them. And so for a lot of people, they feel like they are kind of controlled with sugar. And so that's really why I wanted to talk about this topic. So just kind of starting off, there are two major kind of ways that people get sugar into their bodies. One of them is going to be that naturally occurring form with like fruits or even vegetables, those carbohydrates that 100% natural, just pure carbohydrates. Now, on the flip side, there's also something called added sugars. Now, those are sugars that are going to be added during processing or preparation of those foods. Those are going to be things like white sugar and brown sugar, honey, high fructose corn syrup, even agave. All of those sweeteners that you add into things or that companies will add into things, those are going to be responsible for those added sugars. Now, those are going to be found in things like soft drinks and candy and fruit juice and pies and all of those like fun, even cereals, all of those fun like sweet kind of processed items that we think about. So there are new labeling laws going on with food, with nutrition labels. And so you might have seen this already, the difference from the old food label to the new food label. And one of the differences is going to be that they're breaking down the total amount of sugars to show you where it's a naturally occurring form versus an added sugar form. Now, a big example of this is going to be with yogurt. Now, there is going to be some natural sugars found in something like yogurt. You don't have to add any kind of sugar to have it there naturally. Now, a lot of yogurt companies will add some sugar to there. And so with this new labeling, you can see what is the naturally occurring kind of sugar and what is the added sugar amount. So it makes it a little bit more clear. Now, when you're talking about overall sugar intake, we do want to be mindful of how much we're getting. So it's really important to know that in small amounts, it is not harmful. Especially if you're getting some intentional movement in. When we're getting some intentional movement in, our body is going to use that sugar. It's going to break it down into glucose, and through glycolysis, we're going to have that turn into what's called ATP or energy. Our body is going to use that for energy. And when you're exercising or when you have that movement, we do have stored glucose molecules in our liver and in our muscles that form glycogen. They're called glycogen stores. And that allows our body to have this like availability of fuel. So when we're talking about that kind of fuel, we're mostly talking about just carbohydrates, not added sugar. So they can still be used in your body, but they're not required in order to be healthy. So added sugars are not something that is needed to be added in the diet for physical health. It's not harmful in small amounts though. We don't need those added sugars when we're talking about balance and health, but as I mentioned in the previous video, health is complete physical, mental, and social well-being. And so it's not just about, health is not just about that physical aspect. You can still have an overall very balanced, healthy lifestyle. So do not get this as me saying, go ahead and, eat however much amount of sugar that you want. I mean, go ahead and do that. Like, I'm not gonna be the boss of you, and I really don't food police, and yeah, do whatever you want. But if it's somebody that I was working with, I would try to just kind of be aware of any additional added sugars that they're getting throughout their day, and then see if we can maybe tweak things here and there to reduce that amount of added sugar, so that whenever they really do intentionally want to choose something with a little bit of added sugar, that they can do so because it's not harmful in those small amounts. Now, when we're talking about added sugar amounts, the reason why I like to make some tweaks here and there to reduce the amount of overall added sugars is because it's found in so many different places, and I want to allow that opportunity for my clients to have a little bit of that intentional, like, they are choosing to have that rather than having it come into their diet, into their nutrition, and they're not really even like enjoying it, or not like intentionally having that because of the sugar. So when we're talking about kind of guidelines, the American Heart Association recommends no more than 100 calories of added sugars for women and 150 calories of added sugar for men per day. So what does that look like? That looks like 6 teaspoons of added sugar for women. That's about 24 grams of carbohydrates of those sugars. And then for men, 9 teaspoons as the max. So that's 36 grams of sugars. So if you look on that nutrition label, aiming for overall daily intake less than 24 grams or 36 grams. Okay, so again, this is for the average person. If somebody is a little bit more active, having some more around their activity, it's going to be metabolized as energy. So that was the American Heart Association. Now the World Health Organization has a recommendation of no more than 25 grams of added sugars per day. So to give this a little bit of context, 1 can of soda, so let's use an example of Coca-Cola, that's going to be like 39 grams of sugar, which, again, having some, not gonna be harmful for your health. We're talking about overall, our bodies are really resilient. We can have overall balance, lots of really good nutrition and balance in macronutrients, those protein, fats, and carbs, and a really good intake of micronutrients, those vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, the naturally occurring plant chemicals. So that 1 can is not gonna make a difference long term, but if it's a couple cans consistently on a regular basis, we can start to see concerns regarding added sugars. So I like knowing the numbers to have something as like a starting point, as a base. But the more that we aim to reduce the amount of added sugars, the better overall, okay? So again, I can't stress this enough. So I hope this overall is taken in context with everything that we've talked about and everything in my previous video. Nutrition is never black or white. It should not be black or white because it is dealing with humans, and we are not robots. Everything is within the context, right? So when we're talking about nutrition, it's not just that hard science aspect, it's also the soft science aspect. And what I mean by hard science is those are going to be things like physics, like chemistry, and soft science are going to be those like sociology and psychology, and nutrition is a blend of those. It's partly soft science and hard science, and together we need to take everything into context when we're talking about nutrition. So I want to back up and say a little bit, if you're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, she's saying that, like, she should never be saying that sugars are okay. So I'm not a dietitian who is just going to talk about the hard science aspect. I'm a dietitian who is a nutrition coach, and how I practice nutrition is also utilizing the soft sciences. And within soft sciences, you'll find sociology and psychology. And it's not that I'm like practicing those things, but taking overall concepts and like using part of the soft science aspects and hard science aspects and blending them together to what is doable, consistent, long-term, and in a way that supports health, which is the definition: physical, mental, and social well-being. So yes, added sugars are not going to be something that is recommended when you're looking at the hard science because it's just not helpful. It's not going to make your health any better necessarily, but we're taking all aspects of it and we're talking about long-term longevity of a nutrition plan. So remember that whenever you watch any of my videos, I am first and foremost a nutrition coach, and I take the hard science and the soft science and blend them for doability. All right, so let's get into how to reduce added sugars in our diet. Now, if you are working with me one-on-one, then how this is implemented, these 9 steps, they might look a little bit different, and they're going to be very individualized for you. So this is kind of just an overall good way of approaching how to reduce added sugars into your diet. Number 1 is going to be to write down one normal day of eating. I don't want you to be on your best behavior, whatever you think that looks like. Just have a day where you write down what your normal intake is. The reason why I do this is because the first step is the awareness of what is going on. It's hard to have a starting point without knowing where to start. And the purpose of this is not to shame or guilt you. This is just gathering data. That's all it is. Number 2 is to eat whole foods. So foods that are minimally processed. On this list, you'll see lots of foods that are minimally processed. With these foods, there's not going to be a lot of foods that have multiple ingredients. The reason why we want to reduce the amount of highly processed food is that when we have the longer list of ingredients, a lot of times some of those ingredients will be that added sugar. So if you're choosing mostly whole foods that are minimally processed and have minimal amounts of ingredients, that is kind of a good starting point. Now, of course, if you just pick up a bag of white sugar, that's just gonna have one ingredient, which is what we're trying to be more mindful of. So this is not, again, just like a black or white thing. There's context within this step too. Number 3 is gonna be relying on number 1. So look at your overall intake and see if you're getting enough protein. Now, if you're talking about grams, around 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal is gonna be a good kind of starting place, depending on where you're at. Remember, I'm not your dietitian, so I can't give you that exact recommendation, but you don't have to necessarily count grams either. If you're getting around a palm or so of your hand in a protein dense food, that's generally going to be enough. That's going to be pretty good. So the reason why we want to make sure that we're getting enough protein, maybe we have to increase our protein intake a little bit, is because we want to have balanced blood sugar levels. If we're going to eat a carbohydrate, we want to make sure that we're pairing that with some kind of protein or healthy fat. The reason for that is our blood sugars will spike up and drop back down if we're just eating that carbohydrate by itself. And so we want to pair it with that protein or the healthy fat to balance out those blood sugar levels. Now, when we balance out our blood sugar levels, that often has a huge impact on our cravings. It helps to reduce some of those sugar cravings. Or to look at what you're eating from that step 1 and make sure that you're getting enough healthy fats. Now, again, along with protein, healthy fats is going to balance out, help to support balanced blood sugar levels too, in addition to helping you feel full from one meal to the next. Now, when we're talking about healthy fats, we're talking about avocado, olive oil, even olives, nuts and seeds. Those are all really great things you can add in either your meal or to have as a snack with your carbohydrate in order to get those balanced blood sugar levels. Now, number 5 is to reduce the amount of drinking of calories. Now, when we're drinking calories, usually that's going to be a lot of added sugars. Now, the reason for this is because it's not really filling and it can really spike up your blood sugar levels. Now, I still really enjoy a couple mugs of hot chocolate throughout the whole winter season. And so one of the things that I do whenever I do want to intentionally have some of that hot chocolate is I'll make sure that I have some kind of protein or healthy fat on the side, whether that is a cheese stick or some nuts and seeds, just something that I will have in my stomach already to help me feel a little bit more full, and that'll allow the blood sugar roller coaster to be a little bit more stable than just having that hot chocolate on an empty stomach. Number 6 is to not be fooled by natural added sugar. So these are gonna be things like agave, coconut sugar, honey, maple syrup. Now, some of these can have a little bit more micronutrients in them than just pure table sugar, but there's still gonna be those grams of sugar that overall we're trying to minimize or trying to not go above that 25 grams recommendation from the World Health Organization, even if they do have some of those micronutrients in them, like honey, for example. Number 7 is to intentionally work on stress management and have that self-care. Now, I know that's like when you're stressed, that is the last thing that you want to hear is be less stressed. But when we're talking about stress management, it's so much more than just saying these are ways of reducing your stress. Maybe you're in a position where you can't really change the stress levels of what's going on. So if that's the case and you're having those sugar cravings, you're getting something out of it. It's providing some kind of pro, maybe more so than the cons. And so we need to find maybe something else that'll fit those pros, that'll give you some of that same feeling. I have a list of 100 things to do instead of eating whenever you are stressed. Things that you can really do, that you can start applying whenever you do have that stress to keep you away from some of the mindless eating of added sugar. And the reason why I will try to help people to stop doing that is because overall that doesn't support their health, that physical, mental, and social well-being. I mean, they're not having those cravings or intentionally choosing to have that added sugar product because they really want it and they're going to be present and mindful and enjoy it. They're just kind of eating it mindlessly, and that's not helpful. I have a list of 100 things to do instead of eat, but if you just put that in Google, you'll find a lot of other lists, very similar lists of things to do whenever you are a little bit stressed and you know you're not physically hungry, to go ahead and do and kind of get your mind off of those things. Number 8 is to include something a little bit sweet in your meal. So when we eat, we're stimulating our taste buds. We are maybe tasting some savory, kind of umami, maybe salty, maybe a little bit bitter, some sour. And if we have a meal that's all of those things, it's not really balancing out our taste buds. And so if you can include some kind of sweet to your meal, sometimes that craving just goes away. And so you can do this by adding something like some sweet potato with some cinnamon sprinkled over it, or adding some fruit into your meal, just something that gives you a little bit more of that flavor balance, that taste bud balance. The next one is to check your environment. This could be your house, your office. You want to make sure that you have your back, you have your future self's back. And so how you're going to do that is by making sure that you have lots of different options for balanced snacks, balanced meals, ready to go, so that you don't have to fall back to that candy dish or reach in the back of the pantry for those cookies or whatever. Being prepared is really helpful when you're trying to reduce those sugar cravings, when you're talking about those cravings that are just coming on because you're hungry and you're tired and you're stressed. Those reasons to eat sugar is just not really helpful. It's not the same thing as intentionally choosing to have that added sugar out of enjoyment and out of just overall the environment that you're in. So context, again, I can't say context enough times. When you're talking about nutrition, it's all in the context. The last one is to ditch that black or white thinking. You don't have to completely eliminate sugar out of your diet. So last week I was working with a new client and they have a history of getting on and off keto diets. They had a lot of good experience with being on keto on and off, and what they really enjoyed about it was that their cravings for sugar when they were on the keto diet was very low to kind of non-existent. And so that's great. We focused a part of the time on what her nutrition looked like whenever she wasn't on the keto diet. And when she wasn't on the keto diet, she had very intense sugar cravings. So we went through the daily normal intake, and within that daily normal intake, whenever she was not on a keto diet, it was very imbalanced. Now, this is not her fault. She just didn't know how to pair foods together. And so what we did is work through balancing out her meals, balancing out her snacks, to making sure that she was getting enough energy, enough calories, so that her body wasn't going to be running on empty and just craving the first thing, the simplest thing to break down, to use as fuel. We made sure that she was getting enough protein and enough healthy fats in her meal with the carbohydrates from whole food sources, so that she would have those balanced blood sugar levels. We made sure that she was getting enough fuel after she was working out. And we just started working together, but I got a text from her that she is not craving that sugar that she normally does, and she is not on a keto diet, and she made those tweaks that we had talked about, and that was enough to help her reduce those sugar cravings. And so I wanted to mention this because I think it's great that when people often do keto, they will reduce those cravings for sugar. But what I find more often than not is that when they're not doing keto, they're eating in a way that's really supporting those sugar cravings, and so they don't have to go from black or white. We can meet in the middle. We can make these tweaks here and there throughout their day and really work on reducing those sugar cravings without going from any extreme, without going from black or white. So you don't have to completely cut out sugars. Yes, you want to be mindful of them. You want to choose more foods that are going to give you less sugars, even some of the natural sugars, but overall, you don't have to be black or white. You don't have to completely cut them out. Yeah, that's it. If you liked what you heard, please go ahead and hit subscribe and click the bell icon so that you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video, which who knows when the next time will be. All right, see you later. Bye.